In 9 days from the time that I'm posting this video, Final Destination Bloodlines will drop in theaters. Let's recap all of the big updates we've gotten just in the last couple of months on this really exciting 6th entry. Death has a design that runs deeper than we even know. In the Final Destination movie franchise, there has technically only been 2 survivors, Kimberly Corman and Thomas Burke, both from the sequel. That is, unless you count their off-screen deaths, that is only ever featured in the DVD extras of the 3rd film. We'll talk about that a little later on in this video, though. If Kimberly and Thomas are still alive, still out there in this big ol' universe, could they be showing up in the new film Final Destination Bloodlines that arrives on May 16th? I have reason to believe that these characters need to show up if they're going to actually tell a Bloodlines-related movie. Now let's get into today's wild theory. Hey everybody, I'm Killjoy Jake, and I'm growing my hair out right now, and I'm making it your problem. You gotta look at this for the rest of the video. I think Final Destination 2 might be my favorite film in this entire franchise, that currently has 5 movies going on 6 soon. A new trailer for Bloodlines drops tomorrow, and you know your boy's gonna be covering it. Despite the sequel's memorable opening scene that has made every highway driver terrified to stay behind a log truck for too long, it's also a notable film for featuring the only 2 living survivors of Death's hit list. Like I said barely a minute ago now, those characters are Kimberly Corman and Officer Thomas Burke. They were seen alive at the end of that sequel, and technically we've never seen them in any other franchise continuations, unless you want to count a very small detail from the DVD extras of the 3rd film. Specifically featured in the Choose Their Fates special feature on the Thrill Ride DVD edition of the 3rd movie, a newspaper article explains that the 2 characters die 5 years after the events of Final Destination 2. They cross paths by coincidence at a hardware store where a blue Camaro crashed into the storefront. Fun fact, it's the same Camaro once owned by an Evan Lewis, one of the first characters to die in Final Destination 2.
Pull over!
After racing out of the store through the back, Kimberly's coat is somehow caught in a running wood chipper that just so happened to be there. Another fun fact, that wood chipper is owned by a Roger Gibbons, whose boy was decimated by that barbecue at the end of the 2nd film. I did my research for today's video. Thomas tries to save Kimberly, but unfortunately they are both sucked in and they get Fargoed. There's also a hilarious part of the article where a store owner talks about how he's traumatized after witnessing these 2 characters get sucked into a wood chipper which blows onto the side of his building. He's never going to be able to clean that up. Pitch black comedy like this is my favorite kind of comedy. Now, while that's a really fun element to include on the DVD edition of Final Destination 3, I don't really count that as canon. Maybe if they had actually filmed this and it was like a deleted scene from Final Destination 2, I'd be more into it, but this is literally something that the folks making the DVD extras for Final Destination 3 came up with because they thought it would be fun. It's not canon. This gets even more interesting because rumor has it that actress AJ Cook visited the set of Final Destination Bloodlines after shooting the latest season of Criminal Minds Evolution. She also directed an episode of that last season too, which I think is sick. AJ was busy this past spring, man. So why, Jake, you might be asking, is it so crucial that Kimberly and Thomas here show up for this new movie? Like, who cares? Well, it may all be part of Death's design, and I think it could be for a bigger reason than just fan service of seeing characters from the past. Let me explain. The Final Destination franchise is actually more than just 5 movies going on 6. There are a ton of novels that detail even more premonitions, with the earliest one going all the way back to 1888 in Victorian-era England. Somebody call up Robert Eggers because we need a film adaptation of this so bad. Getting into it here, a teenage character named Juliet Collins sneaks out of her house one night to attend a seance. She meets with medium Madame Adrian and the other 6 people attending that night at the Mornington Crescent Street house. As soon as the seance commences, Juliet has a vision of the entire house catching fire and incinerating everyone inside. Real quick insert here, there's another novel in this Final Destination book series that details how a ghost visited Juliet and gave her the very first premonition in the entire series. If this video does well, I'll do another upload detailing that lore and how I think it's also going to connect to Final Destination Bloodlines. Let me know if you want to see that video in the comments below. Getting back to the story here, Juliet starts freaking out, which scares the attendees into fleeing, leaving Madame Adrian behind. Once our characters leave the house, the place explodes, killing killing Adrian and her servants in a terrible fire. You've heard this song and dance before though, so you probably know what happens next. The cheaters of death here meet their ends in extremely awful ways, some that I really hope are put to the screen one day. One kill involves accidentally ingesting acid, another a quiver of cobras, that is multiple cobras by the way, and also an entire subplot that revolves around Jack the Ripper. This sounds so good. Again, have we called up Robert Eggers yet? If not, I'm gonna have to bounce on it crazy style. Now I have to apologize because technically I lied to you earlier. If these books are canon, then technically we have many other survivors who have cheated death outside of Kimberly and Thomas. The climax of this novel sees Juliet drowning in the Thames River, only to be resuscitated by a constable. She died and then came back. The flatliners thing is truly the only way to cheat death's design. Oddly enough, Kimberly and Thomas also have water-related deaths and then resuscitations in Final Destination 2. Summing this up quickly though, Juliet goes on to have a child, and she even moves over here to the States, which explains all 5 of the movies. Now Juliet does eventually die because no one can escape death, but she dies due to old age sometime in the 1940s, not because of a comical Rube Goldberg machine-inspired death like most of the characters in this series. This story is important to today's theory because Juliet's bloodline continues to cheat death. The focal point of the novel Final Destination, Destination Zero, basically the one we've been talking about this entire time, actually centers around Patty Fuller, a journalist in 1980s California. Her great-grandmother dealt with Jack the Ripper. I wonder if Patty ever had a run-in with the Night Stalker.
Maxine fucking Minx.
She too must cheat death after a premonition that she has, and you guessed it, she survives. But only for a finite amount of time. None of us can escape death. She does this by stealing anesthesia from a veterinarian, injects that into... I don't want to say herself, I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble from YouTube here, but essentially she bleh, and then gets revived. There we go. We cool, YouTube? Yeah? Okay, let's keep going. Finally, that takes us to this new movie that arrives here in May. The film is described as a college student experiencing a recurring nightmare that foretells her family's demise returns home to find the person who can prevent it. If you ask me, this brand new protagonist that we're following in a film that is subtitled Bloodlines is probably lined by blood to both Juliet and Patty here. This seems like an attempt to not only connect all of the film stories together, but also all of the novel stories into one big gigantic family mass death. Personally, I think it's way scarier to just not explain the premonitions. They can just happen to anybody at any time, but it does seem like Final Destination Bloodlines, just based on its subtitle alone, is trying to connect all of these stories together. There's even been a few clues that they're going to use that story of Juliet's house fire within this new film. Rumor has it that those recurring nightmares that this main character will have in the film, likely played by Caitlin Santawana, is going to be some sort of awful house fire that happened a long time ago. That sounds awfully familiar to me. So again, going back to this question, why does Kimberly Corman and Thomas Burke need to return from Final Destination 2 here? Because they may just be a part of the family too. So to sum this up all nice and neat, Juliet Collins cheated death all the way back in the late 1800s. Then she went on to have kids that never should have existed in the first place. Remember, if Juliet died in the fire, none of these children would have existed. Premonitions given to our characters in the franchise are theorized to only happen when many of Juliet's descendants are all in the same place, like Flight 180, the Route 23 crash, the Devil's Flight coaster derailment, the McKinley Speedway disaster, and the North Bay Bridge collapse. And hey, if you want that wood chipper scene from the DVD extras of Final Destination 3 to be canon, technically this still works with that, because this is a coincidence of two characters that could potentially be related through some messed up family history, all meeting together in the same place at the same time. That explains the 5-year wait for death. Why else would he wait unless he was trying to be super efficient and just knock them out both at the same time? And what's Death's motivation here? Well, to stabilize the timeline. So as long as people still exist in Juliet's bloodline, these premonitions and mass deaths will continue to happen, which of course means more movies and ticket sales. If you don't like this theory, the studio definitely does. My assumption going into Final Destination Bloodlines is that they're utilizing this idea from the books to build it into a new story for for the film franchise. It might not be exactly what I just described to you, but connecting everything through this family tree, in this case specifically, is actually not limiting. This could be a way for the studio to build out a whole new trilogy, or maybe even more movies than just that, in the Final Destination franchise to keep that money train rolling. I mean, even the first Omen dedicated most of its third act towards setting up a new trilogy in a franchise that is nowhere near as popular as Final Destination. Every continuing franchise is trying to do this exact same thing. I would not be shocked if Final Destination was also doing that too. These movies have a history of being wildly successful. So that means that Bloodline will likely follow one of Juliet's descendants, who finds out that she never should have existed in the first place. Ugh, that's heavy, man. This could also explain William Bloodworth's return to the series here as well, a character who definitely knows a thing or two about what I'm talking about. He could serve as the vessel to explain all of this to our brand new protagonist. Personally, I think it would be way easier if Final Destination Bloodlines were to just say, hey, premonitions can happen to anyone at any time. But I think this is the studio wanting to make audiences want more from these established characters, hence the family connection. You guys know I'm not really crazy about that though. I like what the Evil Dead is doing these little pocket stories about new characters facing off whatever evil is in your franchise. In Final Destination, it's all of the outlandish crazy kills that happens after a premonition and a cheating of death. In Evil Dead, it's finding the Necronomicon just somewhere around. I think franchises need to get away from the familial connection thing. Scream. Another thing I'm always harping on this page though is that all things are truly in execution. If it's done right here in Final Destination Bloodlines, it could make this sequel stand out. No matter what your opinion is on this theory, however, I'm sure most of you just found out that there are Final Destination novels to check out. There's no way you didn't learn something from today's video. I'm learning shit and I've seen these movies 1,000 times.
Good luck.
The Final Destination Bloodlines trailer has just released, and it's glorious. Let's break this bad boy down and get on into it. Hey everybody, I'm Killjoy Jake, and I hate to be this guy, but I was right. I'm gonna take my victory lap here and encourage all of you to go check out my theory video that came out yesterday prior to today's trailer. I hate to be so cocky, but I was oddly spot on with what is going on in this film. You're gonna want to check out that video. Do not miss it if you are excited for Final Destination Bloodlines. Also, thank you for watching today's video, my friends. I appreciate you a ton. I am blown away by today's new trailer, and honestly, I gotta give the marketing team some major props here for strategically placing a certain clip within this one. There is something in today's trailer that I think is perfectly going to make fans of this franchise scratch their heads and wonder what the heck is going on in this series, based on something that was released previously in the year. We'll get into that theory a little later on in this video though. Breaking this down, starting from the top though, we have a nice family barbecue where absolutely nothing bad happens. I'm totally kidding. There is a glass shard in that ice, man. Ooh, that's brutal. A shard of glass from a broken cup lands in a sink full of ice that ends up in the Campbell family patriarch's drinking glass. He also gives a foreboding toast before the chaos can unfold.
Family, you don't get to pick the one you get. Just gotta love the one you got.
Death's design is detailed here. That includes busting a leg through a trampoline onto something sharp, my greatest childhood fear, and one of those scam hoses that supposedly expands when you turn it on. Those hoses are a scam. Do not buy them. Howard Campbell here dies after stepping on the shard of glass from the drink that spilled. He falls on his back when a lawnmower drives over his face. Jumpin' jackrabbits, Batman, that was crazy! Now that a lot of the fans have gotten what we came here for, outrageous deaths, let's get into some of the lore. In the next scene here, we get a little taste of the story of Final Destination Bloodlines, where this family's grandmother explains that she had a premonition a long time ago that saved the lives of countless people. The descendants of these people she saved are likely a lot of the characters that we've already seen in the past 5 movies. Now, it might not be exactly the same house fire that we detailed from one of the books in the Final Destination series of novels, but it is very similar to that in the sense that this is an awful thing that happened a long time ago that predates everything we already know about the franchise and yet affects everything that has already happened, connecting it all together. And also, what's going on here in Bloodlines is way cooler than just a house fire, man. The disaster takes place in a high-rise restaurant with a bangin' dance floor. When the grandma of this family was much younger, she had a premonition when she went there that the place would explode and everyone inside would die. When she saved them, them, it led to many families being created that never should have existed. There's even proof in the trailer that they're gonna try to connect everything that has already happened in the franchise before, when the grandmother gives her granddaughter a book that details all of the accidents from the previous movies. Then, Caitlin Santawana's character even gives this line.
Death is coming for us because we were never supposed to exist.
The next scene of this trailer, however, made me audibly yell in excitement because we got to see the legend himself, the GOAT, Tony Todd, show up for a little posthumous performance, reprising the role of William Bloodworth.
Only by embracing death will it pass you by.
Rest in peace to the Candyman. Now, the trailer wraps up with a scene that might have you confused if you saw the teaser trailer that came out just a few months ago.
My old man just died. I come in as a favor and now they want me to lock up.
Richard Harmon's character walks backwards into the street like no intelligent human being ever has in their lives, and then supposedly gets hit by a van. Obviously, that's a sick reference to the original film where one of our characters gets hit with a bus, but also a lot of fans watching this might remember that the teaser trailer that came out a little while ago featured Richard Harmon getting killed at that tattoo parlor where he presumably works. I mean, he's giving somebody a tattoo there. If he doesn't work there, I have even more questions than what we already got here. Here's the thing though, if you slow down the trailer, he doesn't actually get hit by the van as it's slightly behind him, as you can see right here. I have to applaud the marketing team though, because not everyone is going to catch that. It's a great deception that is going to leave a lot of the fans guessing until the movie drops this May. 10 out of 10 marketing thus far. There's a few more details that I want to praise about this trailer. The CGI and VFX here makes the last 3 movies look like dog water. My biggest complaint of the last 3 movies in this franchise has to be its heavy reliance on digital kills that look worse than something you'd see in a PS1 video game. Especially Final Destination 4, The Final Destination. Bloodlines immediately has those films beat in terms of kills and big sequences just from today's trailer alone. I am blown away. Listen, this isn't the best VFX or CGI that I've ever seen in a movie. It's no Jurassic Park, but oh my god, this makes the last 3 movies look like shit. The digital effects here are a massive step up from what we've seen before from this franchise, and I'm totally speechless. The tower crumbling especially looks really good. Now, besides the barbecue death, I think the tower falling will be our big premonition this time around, as well as a kill involving a revolving door and an explosion that I think happens at Grandma's compound. The family's elder that was teased in today's trailer seems to be pulling a Laurie Strode from 2018 here by isolating herself from the rest of the world. It also reminds me a lot of what Alex Browning was trying to do in the first Final Destination, which again might be a really cool callback. There's a ton of those in today's trailer.
Watch out!
This explosion seemingly happens at the same location that we saw earlier on in the trailer, but sometime at night. This could happen potentially sometime after Caitlin Santawana's character meets up with Grandma. You'll remember from the trailer, she even got that book from Grandma that details all of the past tragedies. I also want to note that it seems like some other character dies in this explosion too, based on this quick shot here. I wonder what's happening in this scene. I can tell that we definitely have not seen all of the big kill sequences in this movie. In most Final Destination flicks, everybody dies. I don't even think we've seen the half of it yet, which again has me so excited by today's trailer. And another thing I have to praise is that this trailer mostly cuts away before we see any gore from like most of the deaths, even the premonitions. The marketing team for Final Destination Bloodlines deserves a raise. Admittedly, I've been on the fence with this movie for a little while now, considering some of the rewrites and shakeups behind the scenes, but it seems like all of that paid off here, clearly. Have you ever wondered where the premonitions come from in Final Destination? The trailer for Final Destination Bloodlines came out this week and took us back to the original premonition in the film series. A dance party in the sky gone wrong. I detailed in a previous video that this idea for a new movie sounds a lot like a reinvention of one of the novels, Final Destination, Destination Zero, which took the series back to 1888, where the very first premonition takes place. There is another detail about that event that gets further explained in yet another Final Destination novel subtitled Looks Could Kill. It explains why Juliet Collins received the very first premonition during the late 19th century. Could Final Destination Bloodlines explain why Iris Campbell was the first person to have a premonition in the film series, and maybe even pose another way to escape death. Well, let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm Killjoy Jake, and my tummy hurt because I drank too much coffee this morning. Anyways, before we talk about where these premonitions may come from, I first want to discuss the novel Final Destination: Looks Could Kill. Besides an actual explanation from Death himself on why certain individuals receive warnings of their coming deaths, it's also a total reinvention of the film franchise's formula, which really intrigued me. And one last thing before we really get into it, if you have not seen my theory video from Monday detailing Final Destination: Destination Zero, a novel that has a lot to do with today's story, you might want to watch that first before checking this one out. Or if you've already read that novel, you're good to go. Looks Could Kill follows an up-and-coming model named Sherry Pulaski, working for an agency in the Big Apple, which is also known as
New York City.
Sherry becomes close with the agency's star model named Cabernet, who even takes her on as an apprentice. As Sherry rises through the ranks, she becomes the face of a trending line of perfume that calls for a huge celebration. The modeling troupe celebrates by going down to Miami, Florida, partying on a large yacht called the Coral Clipper. Amidst boarding the vessel, Sherry has a premonition that a small cigarette boat, you know, one of those little speedboats that's like really long and slim and goes really fast, it's gonna crash into the side of the yacht and kill everybody on board in fire and flames and drowning. That's like the two worst ways to die right next to each other. In the typical fashion of these stories, Sherry starts panicking, freaking out, trying to convince everybody to get off of the ship. She manages to get her boyfriend off, whose name is William Sims, but for some reason everyone calls him Brut. Terrible name, 0 out of 10. Cabernet and her boyfriend Gunther also get off, as well as some other models. Sherry tries her best to convince her boss Pierre Merlot to get off the ship, who is of course the owner of the Coral Clipper, but she refuses. At first, everyone is pissed that they missed a sick yacht party, but then they see the disaster that unfolds before the boat gets too far away from the port. The travesty happens exactly as Sherry explains it. A little tiny cigarette boat crashes into the side of it as it explodes, killing everybody on board. Now, everything that's happened so far is pretty typical of a Final Destination story, but here's where it gets weird. In a sudden shock to the survivors, a loose piece of debris from the ship flies through the sky and hits Sherry in the face. This doesn't kill her, however, like that loose tire at McKinley Speedway. It only sends her into an extended coma. Sherry wakes up in the hospital a month later in a situation that reminds me a lot of the Dead Zone. Her boyfriend has moved on with one of the other models that survived the accident, and the only person who ends up being there for her is Cabernet. A crucial element to this story is Cabernet's characteristics. Unlike the other models in the agency, Cabernet is down to earth and pretty chill. Her boyfriend Gunther even says that's why he fell in love with her, for having a sense of humor and not a pompous attitude. She's not like the other girls. Speaking of Gunter though, he crafts a mask for Sherry that's a replica of how her face used to look, and she doesn't take it too well. She's being treated like a dog that's about to be put down, as obviously her modeling days are behind her. That mask proves to be the straw that broke the camel's back as she starts lashing out on everybody, freaking out, yelling at them to leave. The party is over. Once everyone is gone, she then goes to commit... I can't believe this has come up on multiple videos now. This is a word I cannot say on YouTube, but she wants to... Bleh. I'm going to use my telepathy to put that word into your brain so you know what I'm talking about. Ugh. Well, that didn't work and I just shit my pants, but hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say here. Before she can do the deed, she gets an actual phone call from Death himself. What is happening in this novel? Death takes on the shape of an elderly man and meets with Sherry at a cafe. They strike up a deal that if Sherry helps Death in killing all of the survivors, that he will give her her face back. Sherry's starting to sound a lot like Rorschach out here.
My face! Give me back my face!
The rest of the novel plays out more like a Hellraiser film rather than a Final Destination movie, which I think is so cool. Sherry makes sure all of her friends die in the awful ways that characters in the series often do, as her face continues to grow back. I don't want to tell you how it ends though. I'm actually kind of bummed I spoiled it for myself with this video. It sounds like a great read. Definitely check it out if you're intrigued by this setup. By this point in the video, you're probably wondering to yourself, when is this guy with the large forehead going to actually tell us about the premonitions? We're getting to it right now, I promise. Trust me, the story set up in this novel is really important for a theory I have about this new movie. You're not gonna want to miss that. Death is characterized in Looks Could Kill as a wise ancient being who explains why Sherry had the premonition in the first place. To sum this up really quickly, Death spins a yarn essentially saying that many, many years ago, centuries and times before us, there was a godlike figure who fell in love with a human woman. During the honeymoon phase of the relationship, he granted her second sight, like this unearthly power essentially. She could basically have a premonition about literally anything, not just her upcoming death. Like she could see if she was gonna stub her pinky toe against a doorframe. I wish I had that power. I do that almost every day. The flames of passion burnt out quickly here, however, so this god soured her power. She could still see the future, but she couldn't convince anybody of what was actually going to happen to them. She ends up watching as her entire family dies, knowing it's going to happen before it does, and can't even prevent her own awful murder. This woman's ghost allegedly serves as a positive poltergeist, roaming the earth, helping people out, giving them premonitions before something really awful and tragic happens to them. She's essentially a force that works against death, so people she believes should live have a chance at a full life, unlike herself. Personally, I'm on the fence with this explanation. I think it's cool that an unseen phantom has been trying to help people all this time from the beyond, but I think this series would be way more interesting if that was never explained in the films themselves. It's way scarier and way more intriguing to keep stuff like this unknown and ambiguous. And besides, as we've already talked about in other Final Destination Bloodlines theory videos, this new movie is clearly reinventing stuff from the books to tell a new narrative. Speaking of which, I think that Bloodlines is pulling that anti-hero plotline from Looks Could Kill into its own narrative. Hear me out on this one. Iris Campbell, the grandma of the Campbell family, is a fixture of this new trailer. She is seemingly the oldest survivor in the film franchise, and she's totally named after horror icons Bruce Campbell or Neve Campbell. It's a staple of the series to name characters after popular figures in the horror genre. Take Kimberly Corman, for instance, Roger Corman. Sorry, side tangent over, back to this. So Iris survived the tower collapse back in the 1960s. But how has she cheated death for this long? No one in this franchise has been able to survive for that long. How did she make it to such an advanced age? Well, maybe she embraced death in a similar way to Sherry in Looks Could Kill. Did Iris kill a few people that survived that night, and maybe the reason death is coming for her now is that she didn't finish the job? Iris's motivation here was to protect her family. She'll go out and kill some other people if it means her bloodline can live on. So maybe she struck up a deal with death saying, I'll take out some of the other survivors from the tower collapse, but couldn't finish the job. There's actually a few clues in the trailer itself that support this theory as well. Iris has that journal that documents all of the accidents in the series that involve a premonition. She might have known this was going to happen because the characters from the other films were potentially connected to the tower collapse, if my other theory is to be believed. Tony Todd's William Bloodworth has a line in the trailer that could also pertain to this.
Only by embracing death will it pass you by.
So if we take that quote literally, it doesn't make any sense. You can't simply die to then avoid being dead. Now, yes, it could refer to what happened to our characters in Final Destination 2, where they bleh and then were resuscitated, but couldn't it also mean something similar to what was going on in the book that we were just talking about? Maybe Iris has survived for all this time, passed by death, because she struck up a deal with him, essentially embracing the guy. She sort of helped him fix the timeline, which is why her family was able to thrive for such a long time. But now death is here to collect. The dream is over now. This family that shouldn't exist is no longer going to exist. Also, I hate to spoil the ending of Looks Could Kill. If you don't want to have that spoiled, you might want to skip this next line of this video. Giving you a second to click off just in case. But Sherry here doesn't exactly make it out alive. Deals with death don't often go that well. It doesn't look good for Grandma Iris here. Personally, I really dig this theory because bottom line, we need an explanation for how Iris has been alive since the 1960s. I mean, even Kimberly Corman hasn't been alive that long since Final Destination 2. That seems like an impossibility for all of the other groups of characters this series has seen so far. I mean, even our survivors in Final Destination 2 could be believed as dead if that newspaper article from the DVD extras of Final Destination 3 is seen as canon. I think no matter what this explanation for Iris still being alive is, it has to be something that our characters never tried in the series before, and her being an anti-hero that kills some of the other survivors is kind of that. I mean, sure, the franchise has kinda dealt with this before, like in Final Destination 3, we saw the character of Ian going after Wendy's character because he thinks that she's responsible for all of this, and in Final Destination 5, our characters start to turn on each other, thinking that there's some sort of way to extend your life by borrowing it from somebody else. But the series has never done specifically this, a deal with death. This could flavor Final Destination Bloodlines in a very different way. It would also make the character of Iris such a major standout from this series, someone who was actually kind of able to cheat death and live a full life, even if she does die in that explosion. To quote the film Men in Black 3, "Where there is death, there will always be death."
Something's wrong.
Yeah, Sam, something is certainly wrong with today's new Final Destination Bloodlines picture. That vending machine has a human hand! I might have a little theory regarding what's going on here in today's picture based on some things we learned from CinemaCon just this past week. Now, let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm Killjoy Jake, and oh boy have I got a hankering for a black olive pineapple pizza. I hope I get a slice before the end of this video. A new image from Final Destination 6 has been released, and it's a wild one. I believe this is Bobby Campbell here, played by Owen Joyner, looking to save his brother Paul from behind a vending machine. Unless that third hand there actually belongs to Bobby, in which case I have yet another question.
I was hungry, and well, you know, when you crave hands, that's...
Why on earth would you do that?
I was hungry for hands.
I believe this mysterious hand belongs to Erik Campbell, played by Richard Harmon. If you look even closer at the hand, it has the same tattoo that's been seen on Erik's arm in previous shots. Dude, in all of the media we have seen so far for Final Destination Bloodlines, Erik is easily the character who has been in harm's way the most. He looks like he's getting crushed behind a vending machine here. He nearly gets run over by a van at the end of the latest trailer, and literally the first teaser from this movie features the character potentially burning alive in the tattoo parlor where he works. More on that first teaser trailer later, but wow, there is no character in this franchise who is more dead than this guy. There is more to this scene than what meets the eye with this picture here though, because we learned a lot about what's going on here at CinemaCon just this past week. The vending machine comes into play when they try the Final Destination 2 method of unaliving oneself to then be resuscitated. They also talk about killing a baby and stealing its lifespan, similar to what the characters in Final Destination 5 did, which is just messed up. Yeah, I guess your life will be longer, but you'll like be in prison? Bobby attempts the first method, thank God, by getting a peanut butter cup out of this marvelous snack dispenser. This treat delivery system, however, has sinister intentions because it comes alive to try to smash these characters. I'm kidding, that's a terrible theory. This isn't the end of Transformers where like every machine or electronic device turns into a Decepticon. Considering how this scene plays out, I think it's to say that the rules from the past are not going to apply here. I definitely think more is going to happen to these brothers as opposed to a vending machine crushing them like a watermelon between Gosday Dogan's thighs. Collider actually detailed the scene that was shown at CinemaCon, so let's talk about how this actually plays out. I will give a minor spoiler warning before we get into this. Although we don't see anything, we do have it described here. If you want to click off the video, you don't want to know about this before you see it on the big screen on May 16th, I totally understand. Collider detailed this by saying the scene gets tense when the machine is stuck, but they get their snack and are on their way. Unfortunately, the nightmare is just beginning for them after they find themselves locked in the MRI room with plenty of metal on their person, including a septum ring. The brother with the allergy takes a bite of his delicious death treat but panics and accidentally throws his body into the computer, which trips the MRI machine. The other brother's piercings come flying out of every direction before he finds himself pushed into the MRI machine by a wheelchair, torn apart from the pressure. Searching for his EpiPen, the other brother reaches it just in time, only to be killed by a spring from the vending machine. So technically, yes, this vending machine is evil, just like at the end of Transformers. It's pretty shocking to hear that this is how Erik, Richard Harmon's character, dies specifically though, which is technically something we learned today based on that photo. This completely changes what we thought we knew about Final Destination Bloodlines, because we thought that Richard Harmon's character was going to burn to death at that tattoo parlor from the first teaser we got from this film. Apparently the Grave Encounters 2 star is surviving that because he died dies in the MRI machine here via a wheelchair. Speaking of which, you can actually spot the wheelchair in the background of this new photo we got today. My theory on that original scene we got teased though is this is going to be the moment where Erik realizes something is truly going on with his family. I know we've discussed this before on the page, but Erik doesn't seem like he's running for his life in that teaser we got a few months ago now. He's just upset that his dad died, which we've already seen happen in the trailer. That seems to be the thing that kicks all of this off. I think after the rest of the surviving Campbell family has near-death experiences, that's when we get the scene in the trailer where they all have a meeting regarding what the hell they're gonna do about this. One thing is for sure though, never go to the hospital in a Final Destination movie. There's one last thing I want to point out about Final Destination that a lot of you have come up with, so credit to the audience out there, you guys rock. There is usually an order to death's design. A certain character is going to die, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one. It's different across all 5 films. Here, many of you have speculated that it's going down the line of the family members based on when they were born. That makes sense with killing off the dad first and then going down the line to the youngest child. The only thing that doesn't work with that is it seems like Iris Campbell, the grandmother of the family, seemingly the oldest member, at least that we know about, is still alive at some point, maybe halfway through the movie. That is just a guess based on the trailer, but I don't think this character is going out first. That seems to be purposeful based on other theories that we talked about on this page, where I think that Iris somehow figured out a way to cheat death for a very long time so she could live a full life. But that question is yet to be answered. How did Iris do it? I'm getting totally off the rails at this point, but I definitely think we're gonna get an answer to that via William Bloodworth's backstory, which we're seemingly getting here in Final Destination Bloodlines. So to contradict one of my previous theories, no, I don't think he's death. At least Final Destination Bloodlines won't be going down that route. I think they're gonna say that he was also a survivor of the tower collapse, and Iris and himself found a way to keep on living and have a full life. I am so excited to see Final Destination Bloodlines on May 16th of this. Well, would you look at that? One of you guys used your mind powers to give me my pizza order. I appreciate that a bunch.
You found some way to stop death and survive.
A new teaser trailer has dropped for Final Destination Bloodlines that details the final appearance from our favorite mortician, William Bloodworth. Rest in peace to the horror legend, Tony Todd. Does this new teaser covertly explain this mortician's mysterious knowledge on death's design? Well, let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm Killjoy Jake, and today I was supposed to put out a big video regarding the original Final Destination novels, but then a new teaser trailer for Bloodlines came out last night, and I have to talk about it. That video is probably gonna come out tomorrow. I also have a big review of the original Final Destination coming out sometime very soon as well. All these videos still in the works, they're coming. Kicking this update video off though, the latest spot features William Bloodworth's character asking the Campbell family who's next, with 2 of the brothers pointing to themselves.
So, which one of you is next?
So immediately, there are a ton of things to point out about this. Thanks to a Collider article that came out after CinemaCon, we've already discussed how these 2 brothers are going to die in the film. If you want to see me talk more about that one, check out this video up here. I guess there are some spoilers in that video, but technically we haven't seen any pictures, videos, whatever of the scene in question, just a loose description. I won't be detailing their deaths in this video though, so no worries, no spoilers in this one. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that these characters die. This is Final Destination. In almost every single entry, all of the characters die. Because of this, we learn that the sequence with Bloodworth must happen before these 2 characters die in the film. Probably right before they die, too. We've also learned that the scene with Grandma Iris is likely before this as well, when she explains to Stephanie, our new final girl, that death is coming for the entire family.
Death is coming for our family.
They already seem to know Death's design, seemingly going down the line of Campbell family members. We even got to see a better look at Grandma's compound. Holy crap, dude, Iris is more prepared for death than Laurie Strode is for Michael Myers in the 2018 film.
Get out.
We also get a quick flash of the tower explosion, which seemingly happens in 1968, based on the year on this shiny new penny. Some dorky looking kid throws it off the side of the tower, and my guess is this coin is going to set off some sort of awful chain reaction that leads to the whole thing falling over and exploding. I mean, why else would this super cinematic shot of a coin be included in the film itself? I mean, come on, that's not too big of a stretch. This thing is setting off the whole explosion. We also got this brand new sick looking poster that came out out yesterday, showcasing the scene itself. I've gotten a lot of comments asking if that's the only premonition we're going to get in this film, just the one that happens to Iris all the way back in seemingly 1968. Personally, I think the character of Stephanie, played by Caitlin Santawana, will likely have some sort of premonition as well, kicking off these new events seemingly happening in present day. It wouldn't be the first time the series has had multiple premonitions in the same film.
What did you see?
The juiciest part of this new teaser, though, is of course William Bloodworth explaining the rules of death to our marked family in a very cryptic fashion. We have not skipped a beat since 2011, baby. This right here is what the fans want. Bloodworth tells them that you have to either take a life or you have to die.
Or you have to die.
What? No.
Good luck.
He's of course referencing the methods utilized in Final Destination 2 and 5, which of course had varying results. Now, this obviously isn't the entire clip. He says that you have to die, but I think there's gonna be another part to that where he says you have to be resuscitated. But of course, in William Bloodworth fashion, where he doesn't say that exactly, but kind of like leans towards it in a very ambiguous way, our characters will likely take it out of context, which leads to more deaths. That's kind of what this whole franchise is about, after all. The Final Destination 2 method, specifically referring to Kimberly Corman, is that you have to die and then be resuscitated. Apparently, during the CinemaCon footage, the brothers shown in today's trailer are discussing these two methods at a hospital later on in the movie. They're attempting this method in question using a peanut butter cup, because one of them, Bobby specifically, is allergic to peanuts. Not the worst way to go out and then be brought back to life. It beats the Final Destination 5 method, where you have to literally murder somebody, which is illegal, just in case you forgot. So circling back to William Bloodworth here, what is going on with this character? Supposedly we're getting his backstory in this new movie. Who is this guy? Well, a long-running theory in the Final Destination fandom is that maybe he's death personified. I gave my own take on that specific theory in this video here that's showing up on screen. Check it out if you're interested. As we learn more about this movie, however, I'm starting to lean towards the idea that actually he is a real person, not the Grim Reaper, and he actually survived the tower collapse alongside Iris. William then found a way to cheat death, which is how he knows so much about all this. There are two methods to escape death, the ones we were just talking about a second ago, and William Bloodworth knows about both of them. So if he cheated death already, how could he possibly know about two if he only had to attempt one of them? I mean, he knows about these things before the events of any of the films we've seen so far. My theory is that Bloodworth knows Iris from the tower collapse. Maybe she saved his life all those years ago. Bloodworth likely took the Final Destination 2 approach of unaliving himself and then being resuscitated. I mean, he works at a morgue. It would be so easy to write in the Flatliners approach here. If we're gonna get into real logistics too, he probably knows somebody in the medical field that could help him with that. He probably knows about the way more draconian Final Destination 5 method through Iris, however. I think the reason Iris lives in isolation is not only because death is eventually going to come for her, but that she stole someone else's lifespan. She likely feels guilty, if not paranoid, about her choices, which essentially make this a monkey paws scenario. The only person who's kept her dirty little secret all this time, of course, William Bloodworth.
Please. You'll wake the dead.
Personally, I really dig this theory that both of these characters survived this awful tragedy and then cheated death again, got off of the list in two different ways, because it gives so much setup to Bloodworth's character, how he knows all of these things this entire time. Also, if my theory on Iris is correct, she killed somebody to steal their lifespan. This would be the first time in the franchise that it's actually worked. I mean, technically it worked for one of our characters in Final Destination 5, but nowhere near as long as it did for Iris. She has found a way to push that one to its limits. Now, even if all of this is true, we still don't know who Iris killed and how she was able to live for so long and be so certain of that as well. Did she kill a baby, like the brothers actually discuss in the film based on the CinemaCon footage? I mean, as awful as that sounds, that would be the best way to extend your life. Was this seemingly sweet old lady driven to do something that awful? I have no idea, but oh god, am I excited to find out on May 16th when this movie finally drops. I am so excited for this one.
I'll see you soon.
Family, you don't get to pick the one you get. Just gotta love the one you got.
The first trailer for Final Destination Bloodlines proved to franchise fans that this new movie was going to be borrowing from the series of novels. We broke down in a previous video on this channel how Bloodlines may be reinventing some of those ideas to push a new narrative. There are currently 6 novels, a comic book, and an unreleased 7th installment that we're going to get into in today's video. We're skipping over the novelizations of the first 3 movies because I feel like the only things we're going to be doing there is analyzing some of the differences from book to novel, which, yes, there are some. Maybe I'll do that in another upload, but today's video is all about what Bloodlines could potentially take from the novelizations to reinvent. The original novelizations, I should say. So what other ideas will Final Destination Bloodlines borrow from these novels to reinvent, push their own narrative here in a brand new movie? Well, let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm Killjoy Jake, and this channel is about to be Final Destination Central until this new movie comes out on May 16th. Now, originally, I was going to review all 5 of the movies on this page separately in individual videos. I don't know if I have enough time to do that now with the movie coming up so close here, but I will be reviewing all 5 movies in one big video coming out sometime soon. Stay tuned for that big ol' nasty video, it's on the way here. Getting into this video a bit here, the Final Destination novels were mostly released in 2005 from publishing company Black Flame. Oddly enough, the company would close its doors on April 25th of 2008, just a few years after these stories were released. It's no wonder that the movies have already borrowed ideas from these stories, because the novels have played around with the mythology more than the films themselves. Getting into the first Final Destination novel that was released, it was subtitled Dead Reckoning. The plot description here reads, when the nightclub that she's been performing in collapses, killing everyone inside, Jess Golden is more than a little freaked out. She'd seen the whole thing happen in a vision only moments before. Already under suspicion from the police, Jess is implicated even further when the other survivors start dying mysteriously. As the death toll mounts, a twisted plan is hatched so that Jess and her friends might live, a plan that may ultimately place them in further danger. Dead Reckoning is pretty faithful to the movies in terms of formula, but there are a few ideas here that I could see being reinvented for Bloodlines. There's a quick scene featuring a homeless man who sort of predicts the next 2 deaths. He gets the order wrong of a girl and then a boy, but yes, a boy and a girl do die in the next scene. This makes me think that there are more people in this universe tuned to the Reaper's frequency, kinda like this guy. Many fans are questioning how Iris Campbell, the old lady from the trailer, has been able to escape death for as long as she has. Maybe Bloodlines will explain that some people in this universe can just see the clues that death is coming a little better than others. There's also a scene where Jess, the punk rocker who had the premonition in this novel, has a dream where she visits an ethereal realm where the souls of the dead reside. She has seen everyone who has died so far, as well as death himself, taking on the shape of a shifting pile of corpses. Now, while I love this visual, it feels a little too Freddy Krueger for the Final Destination franchise. This series is certainly supernatural, but way more cynical than something like A Nightmare on Elm Street. If you're trying to make a Final Destination film that feels very akin to that original tone, I don't think it would indulge in such a fantastical visual like that, even though it is pretty cool. The next novel that was released was subtitled Destination Zero, but we've already covered that extensively in this video here and how it connects to things we've already seen in Final Destination Bloodlines. Give that video a watch. Now, if you've seen every Final Destination video on this channel so far, this is completely brand new territory. We have not mentioned this third novel yet, which is subtitled End of the Line. This one is about a group of international students who are expecting to live the wildlife on a cultural exchange trip to New York, but soon find themselves the only survivors of a horrific subway crash. A young doctor treating the victims tells the students that they were meant to have died in the wreck, but they just dismiss it as an idle fantasy. When the group starts dying in bizarre and grotesque ways, it slowly becomes apparent that darker forces are at play. From the plot description alone, you can maybe guess that Final Destination 3's ending was kind of taken from this novel, but it gets even weirder than that. There's also a scene in this one where a character is killed by an overflowing bathtub on the floor above in a hospital. This scene almost verbatim is featured in the 2009 film The Final Destination that came out only a few years after this book's release. So basically, the film franchise has been borrowing from the novels for decades now. It's not so crazy to assume that Bloodlines will be following suit. End of the Line also features an interesting finale featuring a secondary antagonist. Kate Shelley is a nurse who plays a dangerous game, injecting herself with succinimethonium. The drug temporarily causes paralysis and is typically used for for general anesthesia. Why am I making this sound like the trailer for an awful 2000s comedy? Let's get back to this. For whatever reason, Kate injects it into herself and sees how long she can run before the effects start to kick in. When she inevitably passes out, the oxygen machine used to keep her breathing fails, and it temporarily kills Kate. Once a new oxygen tank is placed in the machine, she's resuscitated, but not without a messed up new ability. She can see when people are about to die. There's even an entire subplot in the book about how she sees a mobster who's about to die, tries to save him, but ends up getting herself in the mix. Some of the subplots in these novels are crazy, man. That Destination Zero has one about Jack the Ripper, like what? She tries helping out all of our survivors knowing that they should be dead just upon seeing them, but unconsciously is an instrument for death. That bathtub we were talking about earlier, it was her fault technically because she gave the patient there too much medication. They fell asleep. This works as a little twist in the novel, and although it feels kind of messy to me, I really like the idea of having a secondary antagonist in these movies. Final Destination 5 tries its hand at something like that, and it's pretty cool, but I still think the best use of a secondary antagonist in any of these stories is without a doubt Looks Could Kill. We covered that novel in a previous video as well. Once again, give this a watch if you have not seen it yet. Next up is Final Destination Dead Man's Hand. This one follows a couple, Allie and Thomas, that drunkenly get married in Las Vegas despite some issues in their relationship. The next day, Allie has a premonition of a terrible elevator accident and she takes steps to stop it from happening. Allie and 4 other people survive the ordeal and cheat death. There's also a really cheesy tagline from this one that reads, "In a town where the odds are always in the house's favor, can Allie hope to beat the Reaper in this game where she's drawn the dead man's hand?" That tagline should tell you everything you need to know about this one. Probably my least favorite story I've read about from this entire franchise so far. I guess the Las Vegas backdrop is pretty cool, but besides that, there is hardly anything to write home about here. Besides the super dark ending, there's a genuinely awful twist at the end of this movie where Allie is the final survivor. Months after her husband dies, she gets a phone call from her doctor saying she has a horrible case of HIV that will likely lead to her death. It is incredibly bleak and sucks the fun out of this series that should be fun. This is a gut punch idea that I just don't think works for this particular franchise. The only real positive thing I can say about this novel is that it has a stronger focus on the FBI investigating the Premonition character over some of the other novels. This is an element that really hasn't been present with this series since the first 2 installments. And even when it is introduced in the later films, it's undercooked at best. Take Final Destination 5 for example. I was rewatching Final Destination 5 for all of this coverage we're doing here, and I completely forgot that there's an entire subplot regarding a detective character. It hardly does anything for the story and it feels very out of place, which sucks because I love it when it's done in the first couple of movies. The original film features the survivors all having completely different takes on Alex Browning's premonition, like Miss Luton, who literally says he scares the hell out of her. Clear Rivers practically acts like he's a god, and Todd's father thinks he's responsible for the death of his other son. Then there's the FBI, who thinks that Alex is responsible for the deaths following the plane crash. To me, it's less about the idea of the cops actually investigating the character with the premonition. It's more so about everyone being involved with the accident who survived having completely different takes on what actually went down. Getting detectives or the FBI involved is just a cherry on top. Death of the Senses is another novel we've talked about in a previous video, so for the last time, I promise this is the last time we're bringing this up, check out this video here if you want to learn more about that specific novel. So technically, we've covered the 6 original novels in the Final Destination series, but there is a 7th novel that was never published. Based on the plot description, it seemed to introduce some new mechanics to Death's design that I found really intriguing. Titled Final Destination Wipeout, this novel takes place in Hawaii, following 2 eager gothic surfers named Raven Blackthorn and Kim Rochelle. While at a beach party, Raven has an ominous premonition that a private plane will crash into the beach, killing several people. She manages to save herself, Kim, and a few others, but soon enough, a soldier by the name of Corbin Wainwright hears about Raven's premonition. Having cheated death once himself after escaping an ambush in Afghanistan that killed his entire squad, Corbin knows the price that must be paid and starts working down his hit list. This novel was never published, so all we can really do is speculate, but it does sound very similar to one of my theories regarding Final Destination Bloodlines. Iris Campbell is seemingly the last survivor of the tower collapse and might know how to defeat Death's design in order to live a full life. Maybe this Corbin character is in a similar situation to Iris, but rather than having a family to protect, he's just trying to steal as many lifespans as he can to once again narrowly escape death's icy grip. And let me tell ya, I love the secondary antagonist thing here. Like, yes, death is a force that is coming for us all, but can we also have a killer in there trying to steal lifespans from other people? That is such a cool idea. Now, I've been talking about the Final Destination books for like a month here now, but the biggest comment I have gotten in that time is about the comic book Final Destination Spring Break. It is a really odd read in my opinion. The Spring Break story starts off with Carly, her boyfriend, and a bunch of her friends flying off to Cancun. The premonition this time around happens while the plane is in the air, kind of playing with your expectations a little bit. Especially if your only knowledge of this franchise is just the first movie, you're thinking that plane's probably gonna explode. Not this time though. Carly foresees their hotel exploding that night after they land and can't shake the nervous feeling she has for the time being. After a much longer time than usual in this franchise, sort of breaking the flow and formula, Carly freaks out and gets her friends outside of the hotel. It then, of course, goes up in flames and blows up. I guess we could look at Final Destination Bloodlines and say they're doing something similar to that, with the fact that the premonition here is happening in the late 60s and affecting characters in present day. But that feels like a stretch to me. This comic is more so answering the question of what if Flight 180 landed safely in Paris? How would that change the story? Anyways, it's the bizarre twist ending from Spring Break that is totally worth mentioning. After everyone meets a destination that's final, Carly begins to cry. She looks in a mirror and sees a shaman she visited earlier in the story who says that she's the reincarnation of Ixchel. I think that's how you pronounce that. Itzel. It's Itzel, like schnitzel. Itzel, a jaguar goddess of ancient Mayan culture. She represents the cycles of life and death, turning this story into a metaphorical sucker punch. The shaman says she must vanish like her people before her as she fades away out of existence. What? Yeah, I don't think that's how Bloodlines is going to end. With all of that being said, there is a ton to chew on regarding what Bloodlines is going to actually borrow from the novels or not.
I saved a lot of lives that night.
Everyone needs to get off the dance floor!
We've recently seen some exciting new shots from Final Destination Bloodlines, some that even have me rethinking some of my latest theories. In today's video, let's talk about everything we've learned from the most recent marketing for the 6th entry, as well as an unreleased final trailer. Now let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm Killjoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. The 6th entry in the Final Destination franchise has had a ton of sporadic updates just in the past few weeks or so. First off, here's this sick international poster for the new film featuring a bloody skull made up of a bunch of victims screaming. If that doesn't get you hyped, maybe everything else in this video will. Our first major update comes from one of the directors, Zach Lipovsky, who recently told SFX magazine for the film The First Premonition takes place in 1969. There are lots of deaths during the premonition, which is what normally happens in the opening sequence of a Final Destination movie, but we then come out of the eye of a different person in the modern day. That's new. For a lot of fans, I think that's going to immediately throw them for a loop. It's going to make them lean forward to try and figure out what's going on. This quote makes me think that Stephanie, our new lead, played by Caitlin Santawana, will likely be this character that Zach is talking about here. I have reason to believe that a lot of the marketing we've seen so far has simply been her premonitions. More on that later. Talking about himself and co-director Adam Stein, Lipovsky noted, "As moviegoers, we love it when you have to lean forward in your seat because a movie is being unpredictable. We switch up a lot of the predictability, including who's going to die next and how they are going to die. You might think it's one person, but it's not. There's a delight in that." In a previous video, we detailed how Death's design is going down the literal bloodline of the Campbell family, killing each member based on when they were born. That means it's looking pretty grim for Grandma Iris and Daddy Howard. They're likely the first to go. It does raise some questions about the unpredictability factor, though. Are there any secrets that this family holds that may come out before their deaths, disrupting the design as they know it? Some sort of twist like this usually happens in these films, so I wouldn't be surprised if our characters end up being wrong at one point on who's next to bite the dust. The meat and potatoes of this video is without a doubt some of the new photos. Here's Owen Patrick Joyner as Bobby having an allergic reaction to those tasty peanut butter cups. The cute little animals on his hoodie are cracking me up, by the way. It's giving me a Happy Tree Friends vibe. As we learned from CinemaCon this past month, this is likely a prelude to the two brothers' deaths, Bobby and Eric. I'll have more on that later in a spoilery section of today's video, but I will of course give you a big warning before we get to that. We're saving it for the end, stay tuned. There's this ominous shot of young Iris watching the tower burn, likely in her premonition. I'm really excited to get to this scene. There's been promises that there'll be some brutal deaths in all of the premonitions across this entire movie. It should kick this one off with a bang. It's this next shot, however, that's raising the most questions. Based on a shot in the trailer, fans assumed that this funeral was for the patriarch of the Campbell family, Howard, who we see die via a lawnmower in the trailer, of course. This new shot features the character at that very funeral, which is likely for Iris. That makes his toast from the trailer a little more interesting, considering it likely happens right after Iris's funeral.
Family. You don't get to pick the one you get. Just gotta love the one you got.
So you might be asking, why did the headstone say Howard Campbell then, Jake? Well, it might have been one of Stephanie's premonitions. In every shot I have shown you so far, Caitlin Santawana's character is looking around like something isn't right. She's also the only person who notices the clue with the headstone in that trailer shot, and she's even looking all funky at the barbecue. Not only is Iris our premonition character this time around, saving everybody in that tower, sort of, all the way back in 1969, I also think Steph may have inherited that from her grandmother. This once again feels a lot like the novel Final Destination: Destination Zero, which we detailed in a previous video. Thank you for 100,000 views on that one, by the way. This next shot gave me a headache. It's Stephanie in front of a board that features a ton of names and a bunch of accidents. After analyzing the names and systematically plugging them into Google, I'm pretty sure these are all new characters that we've never met before. So maybe this new entry doesn't tie every previous film together, but it does imply that all of those families that never should have existed are getting wiped out by death. They're probably already dead before this movie begins. That's going to make this film feel a lot more hopeless for its main characters, and may even set up an interesting prequel. We know something is certainly coming next for this franchise after Bloodlines, considering some of those early box office predictions. Early projections for Bloodlines says it will likely pull in 30 million plus during its opening weekend alone, which is easily the best numbers this series has ever seen. Obviously, this is just early predictions, but we likely have a hit on our hands here, people. Finally, from these new pictures, we have this hand being degloved by a ring trapped between two nails. This is a horrifying and pretty decent practical effect. I do wish there was more blood, however, but I'm sure we're gonna get some more of that on May 16th when this one finally releases. Whose hand do you think is getting the skin ripped off of it here? Let me know down in the comments below. The latest news for Final Destination 6 is that an early screening occurred for the film last night, and some reviews are already floating out there. There's also a leaked version of the final trailer that I want to just talk about already on the page, since everyone else already has. I'm just gonna put a big spoiler warning up now if you don't want to know anything else more about this film. Maybe we've already said too much, and that's totally fine. Go no further if that's the way you feel. Coming from @LifeIsAFilmFest over on Twitter, the cast of Final Destination Bloodlines at Fangoria screening in New York City. It is exactly what you want it to be. So many elaborate and inventive kills, the opening scene is extremely unnerving, and the film keeps it up that level until the final frame. Andrew Salazar of Discussing Film wrote, Final Destination Bloodlines is one of the most diabolical and mean-spirited entries of the franchise. It's got some utterly absurd Looney Tunes level kills. It's often too self-referential and unserious to the point of parody though, best experienced with a packed crowd. That last one has me a little nervous, but they are mostly positive, including Perry Nemiroff's review here. Perry wrote, I am a very happy Final Destination fan right now. Final Destination Bloodlines just gets it. The movie is packed with clever and extremely well executed set pieces that very successfully scratch the itch the 2000 original started. The twisted thrill of seeing the outrageous things that could happen when you get caught up in death's design, and then having the wild ride on the big screen follow you home, leaving you wondering what everyday thing could come and get you. So is this one going to be a little sillier than the others? Probably so. I mean, a lot of the things we've heard about this one sound goofy and outrageous, but it's that juxtaposition with the cynical attitude that makes it all work, in my opinion. Rarely do you have characters actually make it out alive in this series, and I think if that stays true with Final Destination Bloodlines, fun will be had and terror at the same time. Keep it light and fun, but also cynical and dark. Death is coming for you and there is no escape. Finally, let's talk about this leaked trailer. Now, as you guys know, the point of this page is not to spoil upcoming movies, but I've seen this final trailer and it doesn't really give too too much away. It's stuff that I feel comfortable talking about on this page, but again, maybe you don't, which is why we put that spoiler warning just a moment ago. This will likely release soon. My guess is a week before the film actually comes out. First and foremost, we got a better look at this MRI machine death where metallic objects get shot towards our two brothers, Eric and Bobby, through an intense magnetic pull with a spring coming out of a vending machine. Again, very ridiculous and comical, but also nothing new for this series. It's what's to be expected at this point. Running with that for a moment, there's a ton of new looks at shots we've already really seen in this trailer, but nothing super noteworthy besides that spring coming out of the vending machine that is likely going to impale one of our characters. There is, however, this shot of a train that is very interesting. This train is going off the rails, which is incredibly reminiscent of the ending of Final Destination 3. Could this be another ending where our characters who thought they cheated death are actually taken out in a surprisingly tragic denouement? Maybe. Or could this be one of the deaths of the family members who escaped the tower incident back in 1969, but then death finally came to collect? Remember that board from earlier that showed the bloodlines of a bunch of characters that survived and had families? Maybe this could be a quick flash to showing them boarding their final train ride. That could be a really fun excuse to put more deaths in this flick for characters we didn't even really know about. I personally think that would be really fun. Could be the case here too. On a final note, I'd like to warn you all that there are leaks, a ton of leaks, in fact, for Final Destination 6 out there, so be wary when going through the internet these days. I already know how some of these characters are going to die based on said leaks, and I'm not super happy about it.